Grandma, help me.
The faint voice on the phone was my grandson, who had just turned 5. He was hot and struggling to breathe, unable to get out of the car, and sent an SOS. I hurriedly found the car, broke the window with a nearby rock, and opened the door. Inside the scorching car, which must have been over 104 degrees Fahrenheit, he was limp. Not seeing my daughter, I opened the trunk, fearing the worst, and found her lifeless body. What has he done? I can't forgive him. I vowed to take revenge on my son-in-law. I am a 60-year-old housewife living in a small, nature-rich rural town. There are mountains here that have been passed down through generations, and I spend my time occasionally patrolling and managing it. Since my husband passed away 5 years ago, I have been living alone, but my daughter Andrea lives nearby, so I don't feel too lonely. She often brought my grandson Liam, who had just turned 5, to visit, which I enjoyed.
Grandma, I want to go for a walk in the mountains today.
Liam loves nature, probably influenced by my son-in-law Noah. My daughter used to run around the fields and mountains when she was little, but she became more of an indoor person over time. So, I was surprised when she told me she was marrying Noah, who loves camping. When they got married, Noah was excited to learn that I managed the mountains and asked if he could use it for camping. I agreed, thinking it would be fine for family use. He seemed to enjoy going to the mountains with Andrea and sometimes camping alone. After Liam was born, he often went out alone. One day, I noticed an unfamiliar car frequently entering and leaving the mountain. Feeling uneasy, I drove deeper into the mountain and saw barbecue coals, picnic sheets, and scattered trash. The place, usually filled with clear air and tranquility, was now in disarray, making me anxious. The only person allowed to enter the mountain is Noah. Could it be him? I couldn't stand the thought and immediately took out my cell phone. Noah, I have something to ask you. Have you used my mountain for camping recently? There are coals and picnic sheets left behind.
No, it wasn't me. Stop accusing me,
he said curtly before hanging up. His cold response made me even more suspicious, but without evidence, I couldn't say anything more. The following weekend, I went to check the mountain again. Once more, it was in the same disarray as before. I couldn't help but think that my son-in-law might be involved. Anger welled up inside me, and this time I called my daughter. Do you know if Noah was camping on my mountain last weekend? I didn't get any notice.
Yes. I think he said he was going.
Andrea's response was hesitant, and she didn't sound very energetic. The camping gear and trash were left behind. If he doesn't clean up properly, I can't let him use the place anymore. Can you tell him that?
I'm sorry, okay.
Is something wrong? You don't sound like yourself.
Yes, just a bit.
Her unusually heavy tone and different demeanor made me worry even more. You can tell me anything. What's going on?
Thanks. But it's okay. It's not clear yet. I'll talk to you later.
With that, Andrea hung up before I could respond. Is she troubled by something? But I can't force her to talk. I spent the following days feeling uneasy, unable to get my daughter or the trash on the mountain out of my mind. That day, despite summer nearing its end, the lingering heat was intense, and the temperature kept rising since morning. As I was taking a break after returning from shopping, my cell phone rang, and I saw it was from my daughter. Hello? Andrea?
Grandma, help me. It's so hot.
It wasn't my daughter, but my grandson's faint voice that I heard when I answered the phone. Liam. What's wrong? Where's your mom? His voice was broken and I could hear his heavy breathing. It was clear that something was seriously wrong.
Dad said we were going camping. We got in the car. But I fell asleep. And when I woke up, Mom was gone. I can't move.
Hearing my grandson's crying voice, my mind went blank. I couldn't imagine what was happening. It's okay. Grandma will come to help you right away. Do you know where you are?
I think it's Grandma's mountain.
There were several places on the mountain I managed where my son-in-law had camped before. I wasn't sure exactly where, but if he was in the car, he might be suffering from heat stroke. Wait for me, I'm coming right away. After hanging up the phone, I quickly grabbed a cooler from the storage room, filled it with all the ice packs I had in the fridge, and threw in a few sports drinks. Then, I immediately called 911 to explain the situation before jumping into my car. I have to save him. The sound of the engine and my heartbeat echoed in my ears as I gripped the steering wheel tightly, making a strong vow in my heart. As I drove, I was filled with anxiety and worry. Because of that, the familiar mountain path looked different than usual. I'll have to check each potential spot one by one. At the first and second locations, there was no sign of anyone, just the clear air and the rustling of the trees. Feeling the sweat running down my back, I headed to the third open area. At that moment, I spotted a car in the distance. That's Noah's car. I quickly got out of my car and ran over to look inside. There, in the child's seat, was my limp grandson. Liam! The doors were locked, and despite banging on the window and calling his name repeatedly, there was no response. I couldn't imagine how long he had been in there. The thought alone was terrifying. I looked around and grabbed a nearby rock, smashing it against the driver's side window with all my strength. The glass shattered, and the intense heat from inside the car rushed out. Reaching through the window, I unlocked the door, and the scorching air enveloped me. The temperature inside the car must have been well over 104 degrees Fahrenheit. In such heat, my grandson was tied up in the child's seat with plastic cords. Liam! Liam! Stay with me! Desperately, I untied the cords and lifted him out of the seat. His body was unbelievably hot. I quickly took him outside and cooled him down with ice packs, then rushed back to my son-in-law's car. Andrea! I looked around but saw no one. Fearing the worst, I opened the trunk. I couldn't help but gasp. There, bound hand and foot, was my daughter in a terrible state. I managed to get her into the car, carrying her on my back, and hurried down the mountain road. As I reached the paved road at the foot of the mountain, I saw the red lights of an ambulance. My grandson and daughter were immediately taken to the hospital. I immediately called my son-in-law, but no matter how many times I tried, I couldn't reach him. I went to my daughter's house and rang the intercom, but there was no sign of anyone, and it seemed like no one was home. Why do they have to go through this? Tears started to fall as I thought. They became a family to be happy, didn't they? I swore to make him take responsibility for this and began preparing for my revenge. The next morning, I drove back to the mountain. When I saw fresh tire tracks on the ground, I quietly got out of the car. I took something out of the passenger seat, gripped it tightly to calm my breathing, and slowly walked to a slightly open area ahead. After walking a bit, I heard music playing and cheerful laughter. I stopped and hid in the grass to observe. There was my son-in-law, surrounded by a few men and women who seemed to be his friends. They were happily unloading camping gear from the car.
Isn't it great that we can use such a nice place for free? You should thank me.
Yes, thank you, Lord Noah.
They replied jokingly. How can you be having so much fun after leaving Andrea and Liam in such a state? I suppressed the urge to jump out and continued watching. My son-in-law and a young woman were unusually close, with their arms around each other. They were always together, talking and laughing with their faces close. Maybe this is why my daughter hasn't been herself lately. And Noah laughed loudly, looking at his friends' faces one by one.
I'm really glad you guys are here to enjoy camping with me. Andrea would have been bored if she came along, and she would have just been a nuisance.
The moment I heard those words, my blood boiled.
All I need is this mountain to enjoy myself freely.
I had reached my limit. Noah had been using the mountain, which had been passed down through generations, without any gratitude, leaving it a mess, and had been treating my daughter and grandson terribly. Shaking with anger, I stepped out from behind the grass and appeared in front of my son-in-law. I heard everything you just said. Noah turned around with a surprised look and muttered,
Why are you here?
His friends, who had stopped setting up the tent, looked at me curiously and asked, Who is she? Ignoring their gazes, I glared at my son-in-law. How dare you lock my daughter and grandson in the car? What were you thinking? Noah hesitated for a moment but quickly regained his composure and glanced at his friends. Then he feigned ignorance, saying, What are you talking about?
Don't say things that give people the wrong idea. I invited Andrea and Liam, but after we got to the mountain, they said they wanted to go back. So, I just lent them the car.
At that moment, I felt my entire body boil with rage. His blatant lies made my emotions surge uncontrollably. That day, my daughter was tied up and thrown into the trunk of the car, and my grandson was strapped into the child seat. They were suffering from heatstroke in a car that was over 104 degrees Fahrenheit and had to be taken to the hospital.
Huh? I don't know anything about that.
He immediately retorted, but his friends started to murmur after hearing my words. They are both hospitalized now, but fortunately, their lives are not in danger. When I told him that Andrea and Liam were safe, his face twisted. It is an undeniable fact that my daughter and grandson were in real danger that day, and if they had been found any later, who knows what could have happened. Noah. I heard you are having an affair, aren't you? I glanced at the woman standing next to my son-in-law. According to Andrea, who regained consciousness, Noah had been taking advantage of her inability to go out freely since Liam was born, neglecting childcare, and going camping with his friends almost every week. He also started coming home late on weekdays, claiming he had to work overtime. Suspecting Noah of infidelity, Andrea secretly checked his phone and social media and found out that one of the women in the camping group was his lover. In the midst of this, Noah suddenly suggested, "Let's go camping as a family," which made Andrea suspicious. And then, after drinking the beverage you gave them, both Andrea and Liam started to feel drowsy. What do you have to say about that?
I told you. I don't know anything about it.
As I pressed him, he started to back away, looking flustered. But Andrea noticed something was wrong and did something about it.
What are you talking about?
Andrea, realizing something was off, quickly hid her cell phone under the child's seat before losing consciousness. When my grandson woke up, scared and struggling, the cords loosened a bit. As he tried to free himself, he found Andrea's phone under the seat and used it to call me for help. Liam had often played with Andrea's phone, calling me and saying, "I want to talk to Grandma." So, he knew how to use it.
She kept nagging me about helping with the kids and accusing me of cheating. She even told me to stop going camping. I couldn't take it anymore.
Noah spat out these words with an angry expression. I couldn't forgive him for putting my daughter and grandson through such a terrible ordeal for his selfish reasons. I don't want you on this mountain anymore. Leave right now.
What? Don't you dare order me around.
He turned red with anger and raised the camping knife he was holding, rushing towards me. His friends screamed in fear. I quickly sprayed him with the bear repellent I had in my hand. This is a spray I carry when watching over the mountain, just in case. It contains chili pepper extract, which is very irritating to the eyes and throat. Of course, it's not meant to be used on people, but I felt my life was in danger and had no choice but to use it. I have this, so I'll be fine. I told myself to muster up the courage and confronted him.
Ah!
Noah screamed and turned his face away. Although he was about 9 feet away and didn't get a direct hit, the spray was strong enough to make him cover his face. Unable to open his eyes, he staggered backward, groaning. At that moment, someone shouted, "Watch out behind you!"
Ah!
Noah lost his balance and tumbled down the 30-foot slope. When I hurriedly looked down, he was crying and reaching out to me.
Someone, help me, please.
He kept pleading for help, but none of his friends moved. They whispered among themselves, "Did he just pull a knife on her, and isn't this Noah's land?" They seemed completely put off by his actions. His friends quickly packed up their camping gear into the car and left, saying, "We're sorry," as they hurried away. "You will pay for your crimes," I declared, looking at Noah lying on the slope.
Ugh, they were saved, right? So it's fine now, just help me already.
His selfish words pushed my anger beyond its limits. What are you talking about? Their lives were in danger. I'll call the police for you. Until they arrive, you can cool your head there. With a sigh, I left the scene. As I got into my car, Noah's pitiful cries for help echoed through the quiet mountain. A week later, the police contacted me, saying they had found a man matching the description I had reported. It was Noah, who had been found emaciated and in tatters after being rescued by the police. He had tried to escape from the spot where he fell, fearing arrest. Without a compass, he had wandered off the path and nearly got lost in the mountains. I told the police about what he had done to my daughter and grandson and his unauthorized use of the mountain. As a result, Noah was arrested. The incident made a small headline in the local newspaper. My daughter and grandson recovered and were discharged from the hospital. Of course, she divorced him and demanded $100,000 in alimony, medical expenses, and child support. They have now moved in with me, and the three of us are living together. I decided to sell the mountain I had been managing. Partly due to my age, but also because I didn't want to tie my daughter to this place. My grandson was sad that he wouldn't be able to go to the mountain he loved, but he smiled and said,
But it's okay because I can be with Grandma.
His smile and words warmed my heart like sunlight filtering through the trees.
How did you like this story? Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.